And we're live Tuesday, the 14th of March, 2023. You're back with another somewhat somber episode of the Tiger Town podcast, heading into round three, reviewing round two. I'm Zac, he's Toby. How are you this evening, my dude? Going
Well,
well?
my mate messaged you yesterday and said I don't have the motivation to do this one today.
Yeah, I can't imagine
What
why.
was that, sorry?
Can't imagine why.
Oh
I
yeah,
said I can't.
no. Like it's baffling, isn't it? Like why don't I have the motivation at all? I don't know. Oh, I know.
That's it.
It's because I go for a shit team.
Are you talking about NRL side?
All my other teams are pretty good. Only my NRL team lets me down,
Yeah,
breaks my heart.
yeah, true. You take the shortcuts on those other teams, don't you?
Oh mate,
Take
we
the,
all look.
the easy way out.
Nah. I can pick a good team a mile away. You know, it's what happens when you pick the Celtics and the Patriots. You just know Boston's going to deliver a good team.
Yeah, I think evidently I've just got this curse on me where every team I pick early stages in my life just are perennial losers. I don't know what the go is.
Hey, you are a Richmond Tigers fan. You won back to back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they had a bit of a dynasty there for a while, which I guess is reasonably good. Richmond Tigers, but you pair them with Cleveland Cavaliers, which I guess I have seen them get a ring, which was nice, and Arizona Cardinals, and I've seen them play in a Super Bowl, so I guess it's not all bad.
No. See, like I said, the only one that really lets us down is the Tigers.
Power of positivity.
Fuck that. I had positivity for the first. Actually, just after the Titans game, I was still a little bit positive. That positivity's just been thrown out the window. You can tell by the fact that I'm
Yeah.
like dropping F bombs and we've only been doing this for 5 minutes.
Excuse us, folks. I think the internet is playing up a little bit. If that's the case, we'll just push through. It should right itself all in good time. So just bear with us. Um, yeah, well, it sounds like it's about round 20 then, judging by that demeanour.
Feels like it.
Yeah.
Like I just
Don't know
want the
what.
season to end again.
We're just saying before we went on air that we're two rounds in and Sunday nights have become a little bit woeful and unenjoyable all of a sudden.
Yep. You automatically start looking forward to work to take your mind off how shit we were on the weekend.
Um, it's been spoken about at large. It's been spoken about quite a lot in the last 36 hours, I guess, across all the networks. Because one, we sell papers, we get clicks because we're a big club. It's easy to bash us, and rightly so at the moment. Do you have a non-generic take on that performance on the weekend, and just where you put us at the moment?
What do you mean by
Something that hasn't already been, well, just non-generic. I mean, we've heard all the we're all for we're discussing where ABC, it's inept, it's disorganized, it's all this sort of stuff. We've heard all that stuff and we don't disagree with it. But have you got a unique take of sorts or
well,
anything else you want to sort of
I said
add?
to you Sunday night, I believe I figured out what our actual problem is. We are a shit club. That's it. It's not the players. It's not the coaches. We are just a shit club. And the perfect example of that is we had probably the second best hooker come into our club. We had probably the best back rower come into our club. And both of them looked like reserve graders on the weekend. Both of them. They had not put performances on like that for Penrith, and they had not put performances on like that Parramatta. But yet they joined the Tigers and they settle for mediocrity. We are just a shit club. We destroy players' careers. We signed Adam Blair, and everyone's like, "Oh, he was a shocking signing." I'm like, well, no, maybe actually he was a very good signing. He just went to a shit club. We bought Josh Reynolds, who was been in multiple premierships, took Blues to a state of origin victory, was probably one of the top 3 or 4 5/8s in the game at that point in time. Had to go to the Super League to get his confidence back. We took in Moses Mbai, who, yeah, he wasn't fantastic, but he was still pretty good at the Bulldogs when he was there. Came to us, and now by the end of it, he ended up being, went to the Dragons to be a utility off the bench to get some game time. We destroy players' careers. That's my take on
Lovely. What a way to open the show.
Yeah, well,
Um,
disagree with me.
look, it's hard to argue that there's not a pattern there, most definitely. And the thing is, the club is an entirely different club to what they were in 2012 when we signed Adam Blair. So as much as there is a pattern, I guess, as much as there's an argument for those patterns, I think there's also an equal argument against it in saying that football clubs are very transient beings, and over the space of 3 or 4 years, they completely change and evolve. If not coaching structures and coaching staff all the way down to high performance, then at the very least salary caps, if not football administration. So they are ever morphing, very liquid type entities, football clubs. And so I guess drawing comparisons over a decade plus periods of time can be something that I guess on the surface level there's a pattern there, no doubt, and it's hard to argue with that on face value. But um, I guess the other side of the coin there is that you know, different squads, different people, different administrators, different clubs playing out of different facilities, likely at different home grounds, with a different rule set in the NRL. So, yeah, I think you've got an argument, but I think there's obviously a counter argument in regards to that in particular. I certainly don't think that we've ruined Coruscant or Papali'i yet, but I will agree with you that they haven't exactly blown us off the park with what we should come to expect with players in that sort of position. In regards to Coruscant specifically, can I ask what it is in particular on the weekend, just in that game just gone, that you weren't a big fan of or that you didn't particularly like? Because I got a couple of comments on him in particular.
Yeah, and you have told me them, and obviously we'll get onto that, and they are good points. But for me, it was like he was known for his craftiness at Penrith, but he was also known for his leadership. He just looked like he wasn't interested. Didn't look like he looked like he was in second gear most of the time. And that's disappointing if he's your captain as well. So, and like, I don't know, like watching him, it didn't look like the Appy Coruscant we'd come to know. Even like you can sit there and say he was with the best pack at Penrith and some of the best backs, but he was even really good at Manly. And he was even like, he wouldn't say he was behind the best pack there, but he was, a decent pack. I'd like to say we have a decent pack. Obviously, I didn't show it on the weekend, but
Was he not at Manly when they made the top four though?
no, I think that was Croker, wasn't it?
I don't think Croker's been around that long. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He was at Penrith for 3 years, wasn't he? So 2017, I think. Maybe 2017, he was at Manly and then possibly moved across
But
when
that's what I'm
Cleary came
saying.
across to Penrith.
But that's what I'm
The
saying.
point, the reason I bring that up is that if Manly themselves made the top four when Coruscant was there, no, it's sort of a chicken or the egg. So it's no doubt that he is a quality, like top of his field when it comes to dummy half. But then I think that the abilities of hookers in particular, I guess, certain players in certain positions are magnified based upon the quality of the squad around them and how well that squad is clicking. So if Manly reached the top four at that period of time, clearly they had a gun squad at that time, and that just magnified Coruscant's effect. And the same, obviously, with Penrith since his time there.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they are reserve graders.
Just a footnote to what you were saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying they are reserve graders. I said they look like reserve graders. And yes, it could be because of the extended squad and the fact that they all are just. We have two of. I don't know what even to say about the halves at the moment. Disjointed is the term that keeps being used, but I'll probably just say unskillful halves at the moment. Whether that's a confidence thing or what, because we've seen what Dewey can do in that Canberra game. We've seen it. He was dominant. He was calling the shots. Everything was flowing. Like we had structure. We had a lot of structure in that game. What happens in 2 weeks? Why is that gone out the window? What has occurred? And the only thing that is really coming to mind is Brooks coming to the team. Now, I mentioned this before. I mentioned this in a chat that you and I have, that the thing I noticed about the game was our halves were left and right. There was no cohesion. There was no set plays. Brooks was always really playing the left. Dewey was always playing the right. That's basically how they stuck. Every once in a while, they might have come together for something, but that's how they were stuck. Whereas that game against the Raiders, we had Wakeham and Dewey, but Dewey controlled the game, wanted the ball in his hand, wanted everything, and it just flowed.
Yeah, well, Wakeham played that game, didn't he?
He did, and that's why Dewey had to pull the shots, and that's fine. But it just shows that the left and right isn't working.
Yeah. I said to you before we went to air tonight that I went back and watched. I only got the chance to watch the first half again.
I don't know why you do that to yourself.
And well, it's for the reasons I'm about to outlay. But as I did turn the TV on and click on KO, I had a pit in my stomach not wanting to do it. But I thought, and as I mentioned to you just prior to going on, I was actually really glad I did, because there's many things that I could start to talk about, and I wouldn't say it left me feeling fantastic, but I felt, as I'm sure everybody did, listeners, yourself, myself, everyone we know that's a Tigers fan, people that are non-Tigers fans, just left Sunday night, if they watched that game, just going, ugh. Like, if it wasn't us just feeling dirty and disgusting and embarrassed and all of those things, then it was people on behalf of other supporter bases feeling almost schadenfreude, in that, whether they were enjoying our misery as Tiger supporters or almost feeling bad or sorry for us. Like I said, that it was at that point. But having gone back and watched that first half, there's a few notes I want to make. The first thing is the first half actually had really decent structure. And when I say really decent structure, as in I sat down and I watched this really, really carefully. So it took me an hour and 47 minutes to watch the first 36 minutes of football. So that was how many times I slowed it down, replayed it, and went through different bits and pieces really carefully. Every try scoring opportunity for both sides I went through. I watched the sets really closely in terms of our movement and our movement off the ball in attack. I was focusing particularly on line speed and our defensive structures. So get to the point, Zach. Okay, here's the point.
Yeah.
Goodness, that was loud. So I will relay back to what you're saying. I'd encourage you, if you get the chance, to go back and watch it, and I know you don't want to, because you'd mentioned the left and right thing on Sunday, so that was something I particularly looked out for. I didn't notice that in the game, so I was specifically looking for that. In fact, there were several times where Brooksy was playing both sides and playing a lot of eyes up football. He had a break that he made himself. He had a half break that he put Dane through. I think that was in the second half, though, and he did a lot of jinking across field. So he free floated a fair bit. I think Dewey is very stuck in his right hand side. He plays on that Talau side, and I think he's one that is very fixed in that role. But I think Brooks floats a little bit more. So the next thing was the structure, as I mentioned a moment ago, was very good. The forwards were running relatively well. There was movement on the ball. There was a decent amount of short passing, creating enough with the forwards prop to prop. The odd person getting turned under. There was enough. We were making decent meters. We weren't getting dominated in the middle. So the fundamentals were fine in that first half, at least, of the 36 minutes that I watched in that first half. The fundamentals in terms of our forward game were fine, which is what you expect baseline. So where were the problems and what did I notice? Try scoring opportunities. So there were several that seemed very obvious that we butchered. There was two late in the second half that I haven't rewatched, but I've rewatched the highlights and I'll get to them in a minute. But several times there were overlaps, and let's go through Newcastle's first try, because I watched that live and thought that was disgusting. And so what actually happened in that situation is that they were in a perfect block play where Brooks got two caught inside and Gamble was outside, and Gamble got on the outside of Brooks, and it was Brooks's fault. And so what Naden tried to do then is retreat, and he retreated and slid sideways when the horse had already bolted. So it was too far. Brooks overcommitted on a man he didn't need to commit to. I don't know if it was Leo Thompson, or if it was Frizzell out on their right edge. But Brooks was too close. And Brooks being quick, I think he anticipates that he can push off that second rower and get to the outside man. He was in a poor position. Gamble ran a perfect sweep as the main feeder in that backline play. And then Naden was stuck. The only other option would have been Naden and Staines to jam in really quickly, but that still would have just been fixing Brooks's mistakes. That was 100% on Brooks, that first one. Really disappointing. The second try to Newcastle, which came a few minutes later, was Gamble again. So evidently Tyson Gamble had a cracker of a game, and he sucks. Like you look at him, and he's just one of those under your skin types, like we've never seen for a long time, I think. But so he's about the most unlikable first grade football. But we saw Tyson Gamble throw the flattest of flat balls to Lachlan Fitzgibbon, and to me, it looks forward. When I went and looked back at it, I think it is forward, but it's not as forward as I thought it was. I think it's probably a foot to half a foot forward, which is a forward pass, particularly because there was not a lot of forward momentum. And the problem with that ball that was so irritating is Lachlan Fitzgibbon ran a beautiful line and he just beat Dewey all ends up. It was entirely Dewey's fault. They were 1-on-1. Gamble was covered easily. I think Kapoa was on the inside, having had him covered easily. There was no requirement for Dewey to get held up, and Dewey didn't even get held up. He got held flat-footed. Lachlan Fitzgibbon just drifted out to his right, so he drifted out to Fitzgibbon's left in midair, and he just simply beat him on that ball. The ball was too flat and too good. They didn't get the forward pass on it because it wasn't a super blatant one, and Dewey just couldn't make the tackle. So, Newcastle really, those two plays, they pulled them off perfectly, and slight mistakes from our defense in that situation. They, again, like with the Titans, we make minor mistakes in defense, and the opposition, as much as we call them shit, were good enough in these 2 weeks, at least in those 2 examples, to capitalize. Now, I'll keep talking about more stuff, but I don't want to just own and just dominate. So, have
I'm
you got any
enjoying
thoughts on
this.
those?
Keep going. I'm enjoying
Have you
this.
got?
I
Have
haven't
you?
looked at it, so.
Yeah. Have you got any thoughts on those couple of tries, or is there any
Um,
surprises?
no
In that?
surprises. I think I mentioned that the Lachlan Fitzgibbon one, I didn't look too closely. Like I saw that Dewey got caught out, but I didn't think he got caught out that bad because I thought the pass, if you have a look at, like you said, the way that Lachlan Fitzgibbon, he was heading at the man, and then at the very last second, he's headed to the gap.
Yeah.
And so
It was a beautiful run by him.
beautiful line.
And the ball was
issue
just
was
perfect.
Dewey was on his heels. If he was on his toes, maybe it'd be a different story. But he's on his heels.
If it was on 100%, if he's on his toes or if he was another half foot in front, Fitzgibbon wouldn't have had the opportunity to drift on him. So again, and that's what the frustrating thing is, that on another day, Newcastle maybe don't have that perfection with that pass. They only bombed one opportunity, and it was Gamble a few minutes later when he had an opportunity to pass to Heimel Hunt when they had an overlap, when Tommy Talau raced up and missed the tackle. Excuse me, and Gamble threw it over the sideline. So, with the exception of that, and for all of them talking about Newcastle was not great, yeah, Newcastle dropped a lot of ball in the second half, but man, they had limited opportunities through our defense, and they took every single one of them. Just minor defensive laps, and they took them. Would you expect a professional football team to do that isn't named the West Tigers? So I wanted to comment as well on Appy, and I wanted to comment on Brooks, and maybe something on Laurie. So Appy in particular, and I've mentioned this several times in several places since Sunday night, and it's only Tuesday evening. So I watched Appy really closely. Appy played pretty well. To be honest, in what I watched live, I felt that way. I noticed it live, particularly in that second half. But in that first half, he gave great service to his forwards. He led line speed constantly. He was chirping at people and getting up them when they weren't doing what they needed to be doing. He was indicating and pointing, and he was doing what he needed to be doing as a captain. He played well. The problem that happened with Appy is he had a drop ball or something, or he fumbled a kick. Like that was a mistake, which is unfortunate. But he played well. The problem was there was countless times where Appy got a quick play the ball and got out from dummy half and went to pass, and there was no one there. And when I say countless times, I mean I started counting 2 or 3 live watching the game, and then it just kept happening. And whether it was the halves weren't in position or there was no shape where there should have been shape or there was no one pushing up on him, Laurie was nowhere to be seen. And I mean nowhere to be seen once. I saw Brooks on 2 or maybe 3 occasions push up with him and didn't get the ball. I think he might have got the ball once, but he wasn't quite there. But he was the only one with eyes up was Brooks going, Appy's out, I need to follow. There was no forwards there with him. And geez, it was bad because I was sitting there going, this is a bloke who has played in systems where he just expects people to be pushing up on the ball, which is what good football teams do. It's what poor football teams are supposed to do. It's what the under 12s that I coach do. They push up with the ball carrier. People are just sitting back waiting for their turn. And that was really, really concerning and really disappointed. And I think the biggest testament to the fact that Appy played well and he's in some ways trying to drag these other fuckwits along with him is that when Brooks had that attempt at that 40-meter field goal, did you see where Appy was?
No.
By the time the ball landed, he was 5 meters out from the goal line chasing it in the hope that it had hit the post and bounced back. He was the only one within 15 meters. The only player that chased that drop goal was Appy, just in case, in the 79th, 80th minute. You know, and these are the little things that we don't pick up live, but we've picked up on highlights and whatnot. So it's, yeah, that was my take on him. Bottom line is Appy's trying to do what he can at the moment, and whether he needs to start communicating exactly what these guys need to do, things that you would expect first grade footballers to be able to do, then he's got to start doing it, because I think he's come in assuming that people are going to push up on the football, and they're just not at the moment. So he's got to do some coaching on the run, unfortunately, but he's trying to do his part. Brooks, there was one run that Brooks did. So Luke Brooks makes mistakes. That's not news to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Brooks makes really poor decisions. There was one decision when we were chasing in the second half where he kicked it. We had a 3-on-2, and it was literally the simplest of cutout balls for, would it have been Staines? It would have been Laurie in the corner at that stage. Laurie had been pushed to the wing because he hurt his knee. And he grubbed it. And Dom Young fumbled it and ended up grounding it in goal. We got the ball back. They did a short dropout. They got the ball back off the end of that.
Yeah.
You watch that back again, and there was another one with Dewey 3 minutes early when we were chasing, where all they had to do, those blokes, was simply pass the football to their outside man, and it was a try. And I mean like a fall over try. So the thing about Brooks is that he made that break unassisted. He nearly put Laurie through up the centre. He keeps shooting sideways, trying to get runners off him, and everyone just stands back and watches him on their heels. And he's just running sideways, offering it up, and no one's running. There's no one running a line, running a back inside play. There's no one running a drift out. There's no one running a back on the ankle. There's nothing. So again, is that his fault for not communicating what he's doing? Did the players around him not know what they're doing? What he's doing, you would think that's a pretty basic thing that some playmakers do: drift across field, drop someone under, throw one wide, throw a flat ball. It's not exactly rocket science. But so it's as much Brooks and I guess the unpredictable nature as to what he's trying to do and not communicating that possibly, as it is people being unwilling to put themselves in situations that are what-if situations, like Appy did chasing that drop goal. People aren't running lines just in case Brooksy throws a flat ball to them and they punch through. People aren't doing this stuff. So he's hands up in the air because he's like, well, guys, you've got to give me something. And I believe it's the same frustrations as what Appy's, if he's not already, would be feeling. I'm certain he will be if this nonsense continues, which is these guys are trying to create, but they need people in the team to be able to do basic stuff, which is come back in, which is run out, drift wide, punch lines, get movement going. Too many blokes are sitting back just waiting their turn. The other thing that I was going to say was just, I mentioned Dane Laurie. There was a few backline plays. Dane Laurie needs to learn how to straighten. Dane Laurie gets the ball in several decent sweeps, and the setups. This is the other thing. The setups are quite good. There was several situations where Appy would get out, and he'd have, actually there was two where there was Steph flat, Then he'd go out to Dewey at the back. You'd have Laurie sweeping around the back of that, and Capel was on that second row at that point, and Capel was hitting that hole really well. And we saw one where he got through where Fitzgibbon tackled Twal, and it got called an obstruction somehow. And there was another situation where if you hit either of those flat runners, it's good. But when Laurie was getting the ball out the back, rather than then straightening in and giving who's out that side, Talea, the opportunity to be able to have a bit of space to move, he would actually accelerate to the corner to try to get that center to commit and then pop out. But the problem is you don't do that, or you don't need to do that in that situation where you're running your men out of space. So Laurie is all at sea in terms of the ability to straighten the attack. He might be able to get that man one-on-one, but I don't believe he has the punch to be able to do that. So, look, there's a lot more observations, and we'll get into them. And this has become a bit of a monologue, so apologies, people, for that.
I don't know about anyone else, but I'm enjoying it. So don't apologize. I'm enjoying the analysis.
Yeah, I think it's of a case of once we get the emotion out of it, and the emotion is still in it. Like you said, neither of us wanted to watch this, wanted to do the podcast. We wanted to do it, of course. We know that, we've got a decent number of listeners now that enjoy hearing it, and we love it. It's cathartic for us as well. But it was a struggle emotionally and mentally to get ourselves up, at least when we initially spoke about it yesterday. I think we're going well by now, but once that all settles and you sit down, you rewatch the game, and you particularly look for problem areas. The problem areas are not the forwards or the meters. We ran for more meters once more. That's not the issue. The problem areas is not discipline when it comes to penalties. For a second week in a row, we've halved their penalty count. So discipline is good. Meterage is good. They're not particularly punching through the center. They're not getting big sets on us. So that's good. Okay, because those are basic fundamentals that we have missed in the past. It's as clear as the nose on my face to everybody that watched that attack is the issue. And what I'm trying to do is trying to provide some sort of insight into where this attack might be breaking down. Because, watching that second half, which admittedly I haven't gone back and rewatched or analysed yet, but I will do once the podcast is done. And I know that's not much help now, but the point I was trying to make is that
you're a sadist.
What's that?
I can't remember which one's which, but you're either a sadist or a masochist, the one that likes pain.
It's a combination of the two. Maybe I'm a love child between the pair of them. But the point being is that the setup and the structures are not as abysmal as what they seem. But they're not. And the second half, I think, most definitely became frantic. Having only watched it once, it became frantic because they were chasing points. The game got away from them, and the same problem. They are not a mature football side. That's not news to anybody. The same thing has happened for the last couple of years. Whenever the opposition team gets down to 12 men, we panic. And so there's a maturity that is required from those people, and you hope that people like Appy, who come in with this experience, can start to teach these guys. Luke Brooks is not a young man. He should know this by now, but for whatever fucking reason, he doesn't. Okay, so there is not a maturity when it comes to dealing with that, but they were chasing points. So you understand to some degree why there was a frantic nature about it. However, in the first half, the structures are reasonably sound and good. Alex Twal should have scored. He dropped the ball over the line. Kapoa's try, it was touch and go. Look, it's an interesting one. I watched it about 15 times on replay, and 7 times I'm obstruction every day of the week, and 8 times I'm Lachlan Fitzgibbon steps into him. Twal is actually on his inside shoulder the whole time until the last moment, where Fitzgibbon drifts in front of him, wraps his arm around him, and pulls him to the ground. It does look like Twal runs into him head on, but that's because Fitzgibbon drifted in towards him. So anyway, that's a funny one. If those 2 tries are scored, who knows what the case is. So it then comes back to the fact that the structures aren't as, at least the first half, the structures aren't as bad as what they looked in the second half. I think that is somewhat a symptom of panicking and playing catch-up football, which is exactly what happened in the Gold Coast game, which is probably the reason why both of the performances look similar. They did not learn from it. They panicked once more. They tried to play catch-up. They started playing frantically. They lost their shape. They lost their structures, all of which were in place in the first half, despite the fact that we didn't get the points to go with it. I still think the structures that they had in the first half were not particularly effective. I think they should be a lot better, but they were definitely there. They looked like a football side in the first half. They unfortunately just kept dropping the ball again. So it was simply ball handling in the first half. The second half, who knows?
Well, that was extremely insightful, and like I said, I was enjoying every minute of it. Still doesn't
Yeah, good.
explain the fact that we had those structures and we had that in the Raiders game where we both agree that that was one of the better performances we've seen in probably the last 5 years,
Yeah.
to not being that over the next 2 weeks. What has happened? Why is forwards not following? Why are people not punching through the line? Why is this? Why is that? What has happened?
Yeah. Well, if I go back to what I mentioned about the first half, you could liken it, I guess, in the Canberra game. We took every single opportunity. Now, if we play that same first half again, the Kapoa try is allowed. The um the 12 doesn't drop the ball over the line, for God's sake, and we don't drop. What do we have? 18 handling errors on Sunday. I don't know how many of those were in the first half, but roughly half, I'm going to assume. So if we didn't drop good ball on the attack in 9 or 10 of those instances, maybe we score another try or two. And so all of a sudden, that becomes 3 or 4 tries in the first half alone.
But
And it wasn't that. But
here's the thing too. You watch the Canberra game and the halves took every opportunity and made the right passes almost every time.
yeah,
The last 2 games, every pass basically has been the wrong choice. Like
yeah,
you said, how many times did they had the overlap and they kicked it, or they ran someone out, or they did this, or they did that? What is changing? Why has things? I mean, there you look at that Canberra game, you're like, these guys are gelling. These guys are understanding what they need to do. They need to do this. They need to do that. You look at the next, like, if you sit there and you look at those 2 games, you go, oh, you know what? I can be forgiving because, I can see the structure. I can see this. I can see that. When it comes down to the fact that you're against a team that are 12 men for 24 minutes, your structures should work most of the time. Reason being, they have one less person on the field. But you don't make the right pass, you make the wrong call, you make this, you make that. Are they not a confident team? Is it the fact that they are playing the catch-up footy and they're like, oh, you know what, we just need to score now. We need to score now. We need to score now. But I still can't fathom what is happening right now. And like you said, it might just be the fact of a couple of, not taking our chances, not doing this, not doing that. But I think it's more than that. I think it's an attitude thing. I think they've got back to the fact where they're like, oh, it's going to be another one of those years. And that's like, at the end of the day, that's a shit attitude to have
I,
because it's round 2.
yeah, yeah. Well, to that point, it is round 2, and I think it's too early for that. I don't think that that's it, but I most definitely think that you're on the right track in terms of not so much attitude but confidence. I think what happens is I think it's very easy to underplay the expectation that comes with playing at Leichhardt. I think it's very easy to underplay the expectation that comes with Leichhardt against teams that we are favourites, that we should beat, and that people know, at least at the very least, that we should have an opportunity to beat. I think with all the positivity around, that puts a lot of pressure on us over the off season. I know that not many of us anticipated a start like this, and so I'm sure the players are feeling that to a degree. I think that the lack of confidence and the frantic nature in which we have played is a symptom of the fact that we fell behind early. And in the Canberra game, we fell behind early too. If you recall, they scored a try. They scored that
Yeah, but
fluky
that was
try
a
down the right hand
fluky
side.
shit. That was a
But the point,
fluky try. That's the thing. Like, you think about that, you could go
yeah,
behind the try line after a try like that and say, Jesus, that was a fluke. That's
yeah,
it. The tries that have been scored against us have been so soft. If you went behind the try line, you'd sit there and go, what the hell? What am I doing?
So on Sunday, what was the final score? It was 14-12.
14-12.
What was their third try?
Dominic Young.
Recall?
Didn't he score that try
Another
out wide?
another overlap. He scored two.
Yeah, I think he scored 2.
So, For some reason, I can't recall.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
so
certain.
it's an overlap.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was trying to say was that I think it's very, and it's not an excuse, but I think it's a reason, and the reasons are compounding in terms of the confidence. This is a side. This is a set of halves that are coming off a wooden spoon, deserved wooden spoon, with a gigantic fan base that have a lot of expectation. These are people that have been battered from pillar to post in the media for the last 2 years, and rightly so. So when they are down in games they know that they should be winning against a team that is under adversity, and they're playing against 12 men, and they know that they should be able to capitalize, but they simply aren't, and people are dropping balls around them, and people aren't moving where they need to go, they then become petrified of making the wrong decision. And by doing that, you're not backing yourself, and you're going to basically ensure that you make the wrong decision. So Brooks, in that situation in the last 5 minutes, when there was a 3-on-2, he could have gone through the hands, for God's sake. 1, 2, and then Laurie's in the corner, or throw a simple cutout ball. He was completely unmarked. Heimel Hunt was 8 meters in from the sideline, and Laurie had 8 meters or 6 meters to go, and he put the kick in. The kick was the safe option. He's taking safe options at a time when he needed to just back himself. Same thing with Dewey. Dewey had Kapoa and Staines, I want to say, or Noffa on the outside, and it was around the same time, 6 or 7 minutes to go. And rather than simply pass to Kapoa, who was unmarked, and Noffa was unmarked, it was like a 3-on-1. He tries to step back inside and then throws a wild ball, and then Noffa ends up flicking it back in or whatever, and Gamble intercepts the pass. Yeah. So, these guys are petrified of making the wrong decision, so they try to take the safe option, and the safe option doesn't lead to points. And they're not executing at the moment. So even it says that stuffing up the safe option. So you might as well go for it, because if you compare that to the way that the Knights were running theirs, where they took their chances when they had them, the ball from Gamble was a cracker, and it was, like I said, it's probably technically forward, but it wasn't forward enough to be picked up. So it was a good pass. It led to a try. It was pinpoint perfect, and it came off. The pass from, I can't recall who threw it out to Gamble. It must have been Jackson.
Oh, it was Crossland from dummy half.
Was it Crossland? Was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where he found whether it was Crossland or Hastings, one of the two.
No, it was Crossland.
But the dummy half didn't throw the ball out to the sweep man.
No, but it was the bullet pass out of dummy half that got them on the outside originally. You watch that pass, and it was bullet-like and automatically cut out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I believe you. I was referring to the pass anyway that found Gamble specifically. Like, again, it just happened to be pinpoint perfect, and that's drilling it and that sort of stuff. But if you're not backing yourself to make those decisions, you don't get those tries. If you take safe options in that situation, and to your point, the decision making is all over the place. So if you talk about confidence, well, in the Canberra game, many of those guys hadn't played a trial. So it was their first game, so they were off the hook there. They knew it was only a trial, so they could take a few risks and play a bit of that up-tempo sort of risk-taking footy. And it came off. And lo and behold, when they weren't taking safe options, they were backing themselves. They made the right choice more often than not. But then you get this situation where pressure starts to build. It impacts your decision-making as a playmaker. And if you've already got the resilience in your decision-making of an eggshell, then it doesn't take much to crack that, and you're all at sea. And so I see that as a gigantic problem with Dewey and Brooks at the moment. A gigantic problem. And I don't see that these blokes aren't good footballers. I just think that their decision-making is absolutely fucking shot. And Benji, probably not Sheen's, because Benji will be able to speak to these blokes, needs to walk in and do one or two things. Either he says to them, we pull everything right back this week, and it is basic footy, and we're going to try to grind until we get our hands right. Or he goes in and he goes, I don't care if you blokes kick it out on the full. He goes, you back yourselves to the hilt, and we'll live and die by the results. It needs to be one of the two, because they're stuck in the middle at the moment, and it's like paralysis by analysis live. They make the wrong call on so many occasions, and I believe that it might be them. It might be them as players. It might be them as playmakers. That might be the majority of the reason why these particular players do these things and make these decisions. But in the case where it isn't, I believe that it is all this pressure that is happening as a result. Playing for this club at that venue against those teams in the situations of those games that they were in, and chasing points and all this sort of stuff. And at the moment, these are not confident playmakers that back themselves. So that, like I said, there's two options. Pump up their tires, give them all the confidence and free reign in the world to go, you blokes go out there and back yourself and see what sticks, or pull it right back. Because right now they're stuck between the two. And it's fucking nasty.
So, off the back of that, because my thought process then was, why don't you just bring in a half that doesn't feel any of the pressure because he doesn't think he's going to keep his position in Wake, just to see what happens, to see if it is that. Obviously, I'm going back into my job. Let's A/B test that. Do you think that it's not that in particular decision, but do you think there is a time for a change in some way or another? Because the way that you were talking then or prior to Laurie, for me, says that he should do some time in the New South Wales Cup to learn the fundamentals. That's how that sounded to me.
Yeah. I think these guys are good footballers. And this is why people get frustrated with Brooks, is because Brooks has been there way too long to have this still as a problem. These are problems that are not supposed to affect seasoned playmakers. And say what you want about Brooks, he's been around for a long enough time to be considered a seasoned playmaker. We haven't won a game with Brooks at halfback since 2021.
Jesus.
There's a sobering thought for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. Okay. Now, he's probably not the sort of person then you drop back to New South Wales Cup, because what are you going to achieve? Okay, either they figure out how to use him. I'm glad up till this point they haven't re-signed him, as was the talk in the off season, because you figure out how to use him or you piss him off.
Yeah,
I think you're on the money in that. I believe that Brooks and Dewey are most definitely the most talented and best halves in the club, but they don't work together because they are both so contingent on confidence. And when you're playing in a poor team who has a history of poor results and pressure and has had for several years, and these blokes have been part of that losing culture and they're carrying that, their confidence is going to be down for a long period of time. It's going to take a lot to pull them out of it. And we're going to have to win. We're going to have to win many games in order to keep it at a point where it can then plateau and continue of its own volition. These two blokes are low confidence players and they're very confidence dependent players. So you get a Wakeham in who is not on the level of those two. I don't believe that Brendan Wakeham is as talented as those two, but I don't believe he is a confidence player. I believe he's a simple, straightforward, do as he's told, more of a robotic style half. And the benefit to that is you are sort of hedging your bets. Because if you're going in with two players who are very contingent on confidence, and everything hinges on their decision making, and they could blow you off the park if they both catch fire in the same game. The downside of that is what we've seen. When they're both decision making is shot, the team can't score points. So you hedge your bets. You put someone in there that if one of the halves, who is a confidence player, is having an off day, we can still grind out something. We can still get the basics right, because one of the halves is that simple, basic, glorified reserve grade robotic style halfback. They can kick to the corners, they can get us around the field, they can set up basic plays, they can build pressure, whilst the other person works on getting their decision making confidence back. Whereas obviously the flip side of that is what I said a moment ago.
Look, like I said, that was kind of my thought process, but this is probably a good time to segue into the teams this week, because we've got the Bulldogs. The reason I want to segue into that is because obviously we'll talk through the whole team list and things like that, but on the bench is Wakeham. Now, he's obviously in because Simkin took that very nasty knock. And I'll be the first one to say that I don't think Saifiti's a dodgy player at all. I think he completely misread that, and there was no malice or anything. Seems like a decent bloke, all that stuff. But it was
a nasty shot, but
it was a very nasty shot. I think he's copping 5 or 6 weeks for that, which is just deserved. But
Wakeham's
Wakeham's in.
5, yeah.
Wakeham's in. Now, is Wakeham in
Yeah.
as a backup halfback? I mean, a backup hooker? Or is Wakeham in to basically push one of the, like, let's say Brooks into hooker and have him out? Because I've never seen Wakeham play hooker, and I don't even know if he could.
Oh, I'm sure it could. A lot
Or
of these reserve grade halves are pretty versatile. There's several that started out as halves that became hookers. Lachlan Croker, Jeremy Marshall King, they're all halves
true.
and they've become serviceable hookers. So I've got no doubt he can perform a role there. There's a little bit of mail. I don't know how reliable it is, but that there is a cloud over Dewey. And so it's possible that Wakeham could be a late inclusion for Dewey. And I would assume in that situation that Wakeham might play that more controlling half. He would come in, and then I would assume off the back of that, then maybe Rua comes in to replace that semi-utility role or that give Appy a break role, which is essentially what it is.
Yep.
There was some rumours tied to that, and again, this is rumours. It hasn't come from anywhere particularly that I put any stock in. But it wasn't just a fly-by-night gossip joke. Was that there was some talk that Brooks was going to be stood down, possibly for Wakeham this week, and Dewey being under an injury cloud might have given him a stay of execution. Now, I don't actually believe that, given the fact how staunch generally Tim Sheens is with his selections and how much it will often take him to make selection changes based upon performance. And how much of a staunch supporter he has been of Luke Brooks over the offseason, and we're 2 games in. So I don't believe that is the situation that we would expect to see whereby Brooks was due to be dropped. So how it plays out on the weekend, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. The advantage of having Wakeham on there is if there is an issue with the halves, we can do some shuffling if we have to. So he obviously does provide that Jake doesn't provide, which is, in a way, I was actually so I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't think of Wakeham as the utility, but I'm actually pretty pleased to have him there as an option. I think he's quite a good player to have at your disposal in that 14 jersey. So, yeah, it's interesting. Let's just go through the list quickly.
Yep.
So, Laurie is out with a knee complaint, probably explains why he was pushed to the wing, possibly the knee, rather than getting hooked, as some people might have thought. Charlie Stone's at fullback, Nofaluma and Junior Tupou on the wings. Brett Naden and Stafford Toa in the centres. Dewey and Brooks in the halves. Toikamanu and Clemmer and Coruscant are the front row and hookers respectively. Kapoa holds his spot in the second row with Papali'i being out. Sean Bloor is back from concussion, and Pole locks the scrum back from a minor knee complaint missing last week. The bench is Wakeham, as we mentioned, Alex Twal, Offa Hangawi, and Tumeth holds his position. Now, the reserves list is Manamua, Seafarth, Ruben Adekora, Jareen Buller, who's got a lot of raps coming through the juniors as a fullback, exciting prospect. And then obviously the big one sitting there on the reserve list that stands out like a sore thumb is John Bateman. So before we get to talking about him and the possibilities of him getting a run, what stands out to you in selection changes? There's a few this week, obviously many of them forced.
Yeah, so obviously Staines in for Laurie, Toa in for Talau. Yeah, like you said, Kapoa and Bloor in there because Papali is in or suspended. I didn't even know what he was suspended for. I didn't see anything that he did, to be honest.
One match dangerous contact on Jack Johns. I didn't even see it. So
No, neither. Maybe it was like a cannonball tackle. Jack Johns did
I
have.
remember at some point he hit somebody off the ball late after they passed, but it wasn't even that late. It was just a touch and go. And I don't know if that was it or not. I don't even know if that was Jack Johns on the field at that time. But
Jack Johns was they were trying to keep his knee warm in the second half in case they needed him again. So it might have been.
I wonder if it was a cannonball style tackle. Yeah.
Tackle.
Okay.
Pole in a lock is an interesting one. That there, because I honestly would have thought that would have been kept by Joffa. I didn't think Joffa was that bad, but yeah, obviously they think that he offers more off the bench as a utility as a forward. The thing that I mentioned to you was I would start Joffa and I would bench Steph. Steph is looking lazy. Now it could be he's still underdone. He had a long off season. He hadn't played for since mid last year. It's a fast game. He's a big
And a
boy.
really disrupted year last year.
He did. I think he needs to ease his way back in. I would have Joffa starting and Steph coming off, but
Yeah.
I still like Joffa as a frontie. We've discussed this at lengths. I think he's a no nonsense like frontie in my eyes. He runs ball hard. Finds his front. He gets up. He plays the ball. He tackles hard. That's all you really want from him. He obviously doesn't have that extra element, like you've mentioned, and I didn't notice it straight away, but now that you mentioned it, I've noticed it more and more. Is the footwork of Polo? That's definitely something that can be very, could be used quite effectively from a lock position. Um, apart from that, no real surprises there.
So Staines at fullback. What do you think he offers? I actually thought that in the time that he was in fullback, we looked a bit more dangerous.
I agree.
We all know he's quick, but man, he's deceptively quick. He doesn't look like he's running any faster than anybody else, but he just moves at 1.5 times speed.
The one thing that I noticed, and I've mentioned this to you, was the one thing that we criticized Laurie on time and time again is his support play. He seemed to always be there around sniffing for something. I think
Staines?
I think he took a
Yeah,
couple
definitely.
of funny hit ups of Appy just because he was there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He reminds me a lot in terms of his positional play, like Dylan Edwards.
Yes.
Dylan Edwards. I'm not saying he's Dylan Edwards, but I'm saying he doesn't seem the most gifted ball player or anything, but he seems to get the positional stuff right. He's a brave player at the back, and he's always, as you said, sniffing around for an opportunity. Which, to be honest, we haven't had a full back like that since Teddy, and different beast, obviously. But I like the idea of a safe, brave fullback who can create something out of small opportunities.
Yep.
Junior Tupou on the wing. Now, did you happen to see his 90-meter solo effort on the weekend?
I didn't know.
So it'd be worth going on looking on New South Wales Cup highlights, the Magpies game.
Yep.
So off the scrum, he received the ball from the lock, I think, in the 5'8" position. Yeah, I think he's 20 metres out from the own line, just drifted sideways through the dummies, sliced straight through and ran the length. Did it easy. Looked good.
I'm gonna have to.
I'm
Find
liking
this.
liking more and more of, and I touch wood when I say that, we don't want to put mockers on people, but I'm liking more and more the opportunities of Tupou when he's getting his chances. So, excuse me.
Yeah, I've got it here. I'll be watching that as soon as this is over. Those highlights.
Yeah. No, it looks very good. I don't mind seeing Toa back. I know that Toa had a couple of defensive deficiencies last year, but I also I think that look, he's got plenty of first grade experience. He's not short in terms of toe. He's shown that he can score a try, and he's shown that he's serviceable. So we've had far worse options slot into. I mean, he was one of our first pick centers last year. Let's be honest.
I prefer him as center than fullback. So
yeah, there you go. The other interesting one, as you mentioned, I mean, I actually don't mind the back line. Sorry, the forward pack. I like the fact that Blaw's back. So Blaw will, he'll mark on the opposite side to his number, obviously. So he'll be marking kick out. I think that's a fantastic matchup.
Yeah.
I think if ever there was a second row that you wanted to have marking Viliami kick out, it's going to be Sean Blaw, probably the best defensive second row we've had, maybe since Chris Lawrence.
Probably.
Yeah. No, and good to see him back. Ashley Capel keeps going from strength to strength. I'm particularly impressed by that bloke, mate. And to be honest, one thing I forgot to mention, just quickly, one thing I forgot to mention about watching even the first half highlights is his hole running is fantastic. Like, it's really good. And he's strong and he's robust. So I hope long may continue, but he's developing into a player, quite a player.
I like him at second row. I think he adds another dimension. I think once, again, he's not used to playing second row, and then he had to start last week. And so there was a couple of defensive reads, and that came to pure fatigue because he's not used to playing that far in and defending that much. But he gets a bit of that under his skin, and I think he can be something special. I think that Yeah, I think our back row stocks is looking very, very good.
Mm,
I think that, yeah, again, it's frustrating to see these players go so well, but then the overall result is just frustrating.
mm,
It's just annoying.
yeah. And we can see a lot of upside. And this is not us being blindly ignorant to the quality of the squad anymore. There is some genuine talent in this squad now. And a lot of it, with the younger guys, it's potential and it is hopeful optimism. But these guys are showing bits and pieces of really good players. You know, you look at Kapoa, Blore, and Pole, the back of that scrum. Those guys they're good footballers. They're young footballers, but they are good footballers. And it's just a matter of maturing into regular first graders, and I guess starting to see the fruits of what that talent can do over a bit of time. So I'm just hopeful that over time we can see that stuff start to develop.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, you mentioned something a little bit several times, I should say, and I can't agree more. I think that Offahan Gowie and Clemmer should be the opening props or the starting props.
Yep.
I know that we're missing. Sorry, folks, just with the internet, we're still playing up a little bit, but we'll get it back.
No
I
one's saying
know
Gary Knuckles, by the way. Just saying.
that was just a focus thing. Hey, listen here. Let's
True.
not let's not go down that path. There's a reason you've got such a good beard, mate. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, they're obviously, Steph has such the potential to be such a dominant front rower in this competition, but at the moment he looks rusty. And to be fair on Steph, he's not the only one that looks rusty. But I just think if not for the first month of the season, he should have been given the opportunity to come off the bench, because having him coming off the bench once Clemmer and say Joffa start, geez, a semi-tired middle of the park with him feeling fresh, busting through the middle, wouldn't that be one hell of an impact to bring
Didn't
on?
didn't he score an amazing, half field try because he was fresh off the bench last year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I just think that until he gets again, I think he's another confidence player as well. We could see when he's got his feathers up and he's all cock a hoot that he's near unstoppable. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, make him angry.
Mm.
But yeah, I reckon he should be on the bench. I think Joffa should be starting. I would like to see that happen. We know that Sheens is a sucker for a late switch. 12's doing 12 things. There's going to be a time, and I think we've discussed this, where 12 becomes surplus to our needs, unfortunately. He's just not dynamic enough. But at the moment, he's making his tackles. He chocks up the middle reasonably well. But in a struggling side, it's hard to have too many workers in there,
Yeah.
um, because you need pronounce that. You need to be dynamic. Dynamicism was the word I was looking for.
Didn't even know
Anyway.
that was a word.
Let's get to number 20. So number 20, glaringly highlighted, obvious one there is John Bateman. So good old Johnny B from the old dart. He's over. He's acclimatized now. Lucky him. He's acclimatized to the climate. Good on him. Very pale Englishman that he is. But he's ready. He's in the extended squad. Why is in the reserves, Toby? And does he play this weekend?
I would have no idea why he's in the reserves, but yes, he plays this weekend.
100% he
Why is he in
plays.
the reserves?
I think it's just Sheens being Sheens. I mean, obviously, why are you naming him? So he'll come in for Toomuth, obviously late, and he'll play limited minutes off the bench. If he's not ready to go, he wouldn't be in the squad. So if he doesn't play, I would be extremely surprised, to put it lightly. So we expect John Bateman to come into the 17, and recent former side. But by all reports, he was average at Wigan for the 18 months he was there, but he was brilliant in the World Cup. And everybody knows what you get out of John Bateman. He's a competitor. He's got a hard edge, and he will make the people around him accountable and make them better footballers. So he could not come soon enough.
Well, I will say that he's been named, and he hasn't been named in the New South Wales Cup team. So take with that
He
what
won't
you
play New
will, but
South
that
Wales Cup.
seems, yeah.
Yeah. No, players like that, I don't believe it, play New South Wales Cup, because you imagine if you went to the effort of getting him over here, paying the transfer fee, in going, okay, we'll give him a little bit of game time in New South Wales Cup to get his match fitness in, and then he does his ACL in New South Wales Cup.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the fallout of that? So I believe players on that level, I don't think they'd do it the same way they wouldn't have done that with Appy if he was under Dane or Clem or anybody like that. So yeah, I don't believe that was anything that was ever going to happen. So unfortunately, I think Toomuth might slide out, and then we might see him come in, which means that the bench looks relatively good at that point. I think, if anything, 12's probably the weakest of those bench players. Then with Joffa, John Bateman, and Wakeham offering a fair bit of spark and versatility out of the 14 there.
No, 100%.
So daunting prospect against a much improved Bulldogs side at Belmore on Sunday, 4:05 p.m. again, same time slot. So hopefully the Sundays of misery don't continue. How do you see the game playing out? Do you give us a chance, mate?
I'm done with trying to give us chances. I just honestly, yes, if we lose and we're pissed off and we're angry. But if we can put on a performance and we can, have things like make the right choices when we need to, show some fucking ticker when we need to, I think I'll be relatively pleased. I'll be like, okay, well, the first 2 weeks was, fallen, sort of, let's forget about those. We're a different team. We have bounced back. If we get outplayed because Bulldogs decide to put on another performance like they did against the Storm, so be it. But I just want to see us play well. That's all I want to see. I want to see improvement because right now we've gone backwards. From winning the winning spoon, we've gone backwards. We'll be the only team in the history, the way we're going, to win a wooden spoon and still finish lower.
It's a long season. Like I said, emotions are high at the moment, but it is a long season. Okay. So you're seeing a Bulldogs victory then?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll win by. But I don't. See, this is the thing. I'm not going to go with my head on this one. I'm going to go with my heart, and I'm going to say that they're going to win, but they're not going to win by a lot. They're going to win by 6, and it's going to be a quality game.
Yeah. I'm going to say the same, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if we win, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get them out there at Belmore, and I wouldn't say blow everybody away, but people go, oh shit, well, we don't know what to make of them, because that's what this club does. I would expect a much improved performance. I could see us playing really well and courageously, maybe losing another couple of HIAs as we tend to, and then going down, if not in Golden Point, then by a couple of points again. More heartbreak for the club, but I could see the titles off the back of that type of game. If the Bulldogs do get up in a tight one like that, something like Bulldogs get over much improved Tigers or something like that. I can see that being the way that it plays out. And look, that'll hurt again, but at the moment, we just want to see this side start to put together a performance. Look, forget that. We want to win, but look, the first thing we want to see is that this side actually starts to remember how to play football. Because tell me that this side and this squad is not vastly improved on last year, and last year's team managed to win games that we didn't give them a hope on. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right, bold prediction, mate.
I'll keep that until he scores it, so everyone knows what my bold prediction. If you don't know, go back and watch some other videos. You'll know what my bold prediction.
Didn't he absolutely butcher the shit out of it on the weekend?
I thought I had it.
He had to fall down another foot, hold the ball and fall.
Couldn't do it. That, bud, you watch that.
You watch it. Not interested.
Tyson Brazil came over the top and whacked it out, and somehow he didn't play at the ball.
Hold the ball, Chief. Hold the ball, Chief. Ball security 101. Come on, Twally. Now I've got to listen to Toby making this ridiculous bold prediction for the next 15 years. He'll be doing it in bloody Masters Rugby League. Yeah, Alexander Twalson from the under 48s down there in Group 17. He'll score a try this weekend. Get on your horse, son.
Yeah, mate.
What's your real bold prediction?
I'm going to say my bold prediction is Staines is going to put on a performance that keeps Laurie out of that number 1 position.
Hey, I could see that. Yeah, I could see that happening really well. Mine is that Bloor is going to shut Kickow right down, and Kickow is going to have a shocker. He's going to drop several balls, and he's going to completely nullify him. Now, as I said, I've already predicted that the Dogs very likely will probably get a win, so I don't think it's going to affect it. But I believe Blue is going to come back from concussion and I guess write the blueprint to how shutdown kick out.
Just going on another segue because we're talking about the concussion. That whole obviously there was that whole blow up with Hastings and Talau at the back end of.
Yeah, should probably talk about that briefly.
Now everyone's like poor sportsmanship, rah rah. He's just come off not playing football for 18 months, and he's had to scratch his way to get another 1-year contract. And now he's going to miss football and potentially get knocked out of the side because somebody else outplays him. How would you not feel against Jackson Hastings for that? He wouldn't have cared who it was. He would have gone up and said, mate, this is my livelihood. And because you are a dickhead and you smack me in the face, I miss a couple of games and I might miss an opportunity to cement myself. No one's looking at that from that point of view. Everyone's sitting there going, oh, it's just more the dickhead that is Buzz Rothfield. It's just sportsmanship.
Rothfield sucks.
Oh, he's like, what's on the field stays on the field. I'm like, yeah, it does. It does. But, keep it out. Like, you don't go up and, talk to the bloke that's just had to overcome. And that's the thing. Hastings knows what Talau had to overcome because they did rehab together. He knows what he's had to do, and he knows that he only got a 1-year extension, and he's trying to cement himself to get more. And he's got 2 kids, Talau as well. How would you not?
Talau.
Yeah, he's got 2. I met one of them.
I don't think Tommy Talau's got kids.
Pretty.
You think of somebody else?
That was. Oh wait, no, that was McKaylee.
Yeah,
my bad. I met them both at the same time.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot of people that have the same view. Mine's the exact opposite, to be honest. And this is a personal thing for me. And this is just the way I operate. If someone makes an attempt to acknowledge that they made a mistake and they make a concerted attempt to apologize to somebody for something they've done, if somebody then, it's not, the onus isn't on them to accept the apology there and then, but to acknowledge it, in my opinion, particularly in the case of an accident. And to turn around and be aggressive in return when somebody was simply going over to apologize and maybe check up in that situation, I think is a disgrace. I think it's an utter fucking disgrace. And that's simply based upon the way that I would react. In that situation, I would have done exactly what Jackson Hastings done. He didn't have to turn around and say anything. He didn't have to turn around and go up to him and apologize. And the way that he was speaking in that interview, I watched it live and I watched him turn around. I saw Tom Talau's back there. I wonder if he did. He turned around, went over there. And last year I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you know this story, Toby. But early in one of my roles, I just turned and they're messy, the rolls that you have. And I just collided with this bloke's knee out of the blue, and I've never broken my nose, and I broke my nose. And I started bleeding everywhere. I've never had a nose injury before. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? That sucks. Went to the bathroom, come back. He goes, yeah, all right. And I said, I know all I did was I cracked the joke. I said, yeah, no, I'm all right. The nose is shot, but I'm more concerned about your knee. Are you going all right? Like, I made a joke about it because it was an accident in a contact sport. Hastings didn't mean to hit him in the head at the slightest. Like, it's. Let's
go back. I never said it was the right thing. I never said it was right of what he did, but I can understand why he did it. I can understand why he was frustrated.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Like, yeah, that's fair enough, mate. Like, that's your take. This is just my take. I'm just saying that, a mature person, in my opinion, and that's just, I guess, my definition. A mature person would have acknowledged that somebody recognized they made a mistake. They took the effort to come over and apologize. And yeah, you might be dirty about it, but you acknowledge at the moment that this person is trying to make amends for a mistake that they made. And it could be something like, yeah, it's fine, all good, or whatever, or something like, yeah, I've got the shits about it. Thanks for apologizing, and then wave them off or something as simple as that. But to walk up and carry on like that, he's a 22-year-old. It's immaturity to me. It's silly. I've got more of a problem with that than what Clemmer did. All Clemmer did. Yeah, Clemmer didn't know what the situation was. All he saw was that they were together. Clemmer came over and defended his teammate and just basically said, you could almost mouth what he said. It was just like a fuck off, or like along the lines, it's not the fucking time for that, piss off or something like that, and basically just defended him. And then as soon as Hastings walked away, he bloody waved him off. He went over and he patted Talao on the head, just supporting the young fella. So I don't have a problem with Clemmer whatsoever. And all the media beat up, I don't give a shit about that. Those dickheads are just trying to write papers. I'd be more disappointed if Clemmer didn't sit there and defend his young teammate. But yeah, and I don't blame Talao for being angry, and I just blame immaturity for the response to it. I think a more mature person would have recognised, and it's hard. I get that it's hard, but I think a more mature person would have recognised that that was an accident, particularly because it happened earlier in the game. He'd had some time to process the situation. It was an accident. Hastings didn't mean to do it. Now, unless there's some history and beef behind there, but from what I heard in the media or what they said in the media, Jackson actually sent him a message prior to his trial match saying, "Mate, you've done it tough. Congratulations on getting back on the field. It's where you deserve." Like Hastings sent that message to Talao before the trial game this year.
Yeah,
So I don't
read that.
know. I don't know if there's any ill will there. So I actually thought Hastings did exactly what I would have done. I thought it was a really mature way to go about and try to apologise. And I just thought the way Talao responded was immature and fucking stupid. And but that's it. Who cares? Whatever. Move on with it.
Well,
Tigers were dirty. Everyone had the shits in our club, and understandably so. So yeah.
Well, we all like remember when Hastings did his knee or his ankle at the Broncos game. He was one of the last ones to go and sign everything and all that. So we understand the attitude of the bloke. My thing is,
so just pause that thought. Don't lose it. But he mentioned the same thing, exactly the same. That was an accident, put him out for 6 months. And Carrigan went up to him afterwards and apologized, and like it was amicable between them. So even live, Hastings recognised that accident that put him out for far longer than a broken nose. He had the maturity to be able to recognise, out of focus again, that Carrigan made a mistake.
Yeah, it's a 27-year-old compared to a 22-year-old, but
yeah, like just different responses for different people, and it was disappointing for me from Tommy. But
the thing that, yeah, it does bring up an interesting question or interesting thought in the fact that Hastings has essentially been not run out of, but he has had bad blood with at least one or two players at every single club he's been at. He obviously had it at the Roosters, obviously had it at Manly, went overseas, had it at Salford. At Wigan, he had it with Johnny B.
Yeah, not Salford. He did have it at Wigan. Yeah, Salford was a money thing, but yeah, definitely had it at Wigan with Bateman.
Yeah. So maybe there's obviously, I don't know. Maybe there's something there that we don't see. But at the end of the day,
quite
possibly.
Like
I said, I'm not saying it was the right thing that Talao did, but I'm saying that nobody's bringing up the other side of the coin. Everyone's just saying poor sportsmanship, poor sportsmanship, poor sportsmanship. I'm just saying that there is another side to this. So
yeah, there is, and you got to consider that when individual people give their irrelevant opinions on situations that don't involve them, i.e., me. And you're right, that is a different perspective, and Talao has his own perspective, and you can understand why he did that, but I just don't agree with it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And that's how you going there, mate?
Sorry, you weren't on the camera until I was.
Yeah, right. You're just taking your opportunities, eh? But anyway, I was really disappointed by that. I understand emotions behind that sort of stuff. I don't like to see our players act petty. I found that as petty. Didn't have a problem whatsoever with what Clemmer did. I thought he was just defending his teammate, sticking up for the young man, and I want to see that out of our forward leaders. But I don't like seeing petty nonsense like that, particularly the way that Talao has been playing. He's been awful. And so, mate, get sorted out. Because I like him. I like the potential that he has, but I was disappointed with his performances in the first 2 weeks and probably back in the trials for that matter, to be honest. He has been
I'll go against that.
Less than impressive.
Very, very well in the Raiders game. He was another example of a good player playing well in that trial and then not having a great game the next two. It's like it's another common theme.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Maybe here's a conspiracy theory. Maybe Sheensy is doing a rope-a-dope.
For what? To what end?
We lose the first 2 games. People think we're shit, and then we win the next 20.
It's trying to lure everyone into a false sense of security.
Yeah, doing the old rope-a-dope.
I believe that he's playing the long game, leave your nails alone, champion. I
Right.
believe that he's playing the long game, and he's not overly concerned about early early wins because he's trying to build something over several years. And good luck to you. But the problem is the fan base has been here while you've been jet setting around England for the last decade. We've been suffering for a decade. So you might want to play the long game, and good
11
luck to
years.
you. But
12 years.
yeah, but we need, and this club needs short-term results too, even if they are just okay results. It's fundamental, and that's the reason why a lot of the Bateman talk was happening. If we were a side that was winning games anyway, we finished mid-table last year, it would not be the end of the world. It wouldn't be the talk that it is. But we need results now, not for the long-term sustainability, but for the short-term. For morale, we need it for the fan base, because this is a club in free fall, and you only stop that by wins. Bottom line, you only stop the free fall of a club by winning football games. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's against the Titans in round 1, or you pull off a miracle on Easter Monday, against the Eels again. Wins are wins, and that's the only thing that puts smiles on fans' faces and keeps them coming back through the gates and keeps the support there for the club. Because I don't know that he realises how dire it is in terms of support levels for the club in the fan base.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
He might have patience, but
we're fucking done.
He's got to sit down with a few stakeholders, fans, and people in the wider community involved with this football club, either directly or indirectly, and actually get a bit of a feel for what the sentiment is around the place. And that's not supposed to influence the head coach's decisions. I get that. But at least if he has an understanding of what this club needs at the moment, he might have a little bit more urgency in terms of really pushing for results.
I don't
rather
think
than just
wait and see. I've thought this for a while now. I don't think that it's just him that should be facing it. I think that there should be somewhat of a Q&A with the Tigers players and the fans, to be honest. I've thought this for a while because I'd have so many questions for obviously you keep it respectable. You don't bash them. You don't do anything. But I would ask them, I'd have so many questions for them. Why do you play for this club? Why do you play for this? And, be honest. Do you play for money? Yes, I just play for money. Okay, well, that we know you're here. So sitting there and...
Your favorite phrase, playing for a paycheck. Playing for a paycheck.
Oh, please. It should be called... His name should be David playing for a paycheck, not for Luma.
No comment. All right. What are you doing? You're clicking something over there, are you?
No, it's a fan.
He's a noisy fan.
Yeah, I broke it.
We might have to... You broke it.
Yeah.
That wasn't watching Game of Football on Sunday night by any chance, was it?
That's a better story. Let's go with that.
All right. We'll stick with that one. All right, mate. Well, we better wrap things up there. Good show again tonight. I think, everybody is feeling the pinch, and that's not news to any of us. Fortunately for us, we've got only round 3 coming up this weekend and every opportunity to turn it around. We've got few players coming back, and the squad's still looking good. So he is hoping they can get it together sooner rather than later. We will see wins this year. That's a positive thing. We will see them win football games, and hopefully they are on an upward trajectory, even if it started off very slow. So this Sunday at 4:05 p.m. local time out at Belmore Oval down there in Sydney in Bankstown. For us Queenslanders and banana benders up here, well, we're not Queenslanders, but we live in that unfortunate state. It's 3:05 kickoff, and we'll be watching it. Enthusiastically. We might come around by then. We'll see how we go.
I think I'll be watching on KO on my phone because I'll be out and about. So,
there you go. Well, dedicated fan you are, my friend. As always, PSAs, hop on the Facebook page, hop on YouTube, subscribe, share, all that sort of stuff. In fact, the shares are really helpful. So if you're able to share, or just to share without comment on any of your social medias, the Spotify and whatnot, that would be wonderful. Really appreciate people tuning in as always. The other 2 podcasts, West Tigers podcast, West Life podcast, give them a listen if you haven't already. As we say every single week, they do it better than us. But that's it, mate. We're doing our best to stay positive. We'll be here for analysis all year, and probably for many years to come at this rate. So thanks again for tuning in, folks. And as always, looking forward to round 3, Toby. Go the Tigers.
Oh, this is going to be a hard one to say, but yeah, go the Tigers.
Spit it out, mate. You beauty.